Welcome to the William & Mary Center for Innovation and Learning Design Virtual Summit on Deeper Learning. Many times when we think about deeper learning, we might equate that with 21st century skills or technology integration, but really we know that deeper learning is about more than that. It's about students going deep into their learning and teachers being active facilitators to make that happen. Technology then can be a tool to support those efforts, but shouldn't be a focus of our deeper learning efforts. Today's guest is a perfect person to talk about technology integration in this context, and that's Jennie Magiera. She's the Chief Technology Officer for Des Plaines School District 62 in Illinois. And in the interview today, and in her book, Courageous Adventures, she shares some really practical, pragmatic ways that we can think about using technology in ways that solve problems in our teaching or take advantage of opportunities in our classrooms. So rather than focusing on the technology, it's using it as a tool to support the kinds of deeper learning practices we want to see. She gives us the courage to try new things, to fail, to learn from it, and move forward. So as you watch today, I encourage you to tweet at WMSILD, at Ms. Magiera, and use the hashtag SILDSummit. Love to hear your ideas, reactions, questions that you have, and hope you get a lot out of the interview today. So I am so excited to talk today with Jennie Magiera, who is the Chief Technology Officer for Des Plaines School District 62 and the author of Courageous Adventures, a book I just recently finished and really enjoyed. Jennie's a White House Champion for Change, Apple Distinguished Educator, Google for Education Certified Innovator, and TEDx speaker. What don't you do? This is great. She works to redefine teaching and learning through innovative new practices and is passionate about redefining professional learning, having served on the technical working group for the U.S. Department of Education's National Education Technology Plan. Super excited to talk with you, Jennie. Thank you for taking the time. Your book was super inspiring. I've shared it with several people since, and I know it's going to make a difference.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, definitely. So a big part of the purpose of your book is really focusing on sort of giving teachers a roadmap, or I guess that's the wrong metaphor given your nautical theme, but the idea of sort of getting them started with opportunities to think about innovation in their classroom. And I guess I want to start with, why do you think that's so important right now?
I think that for a lot of teachers, for me at least, when I decided I want to be a teacher when I grow up, and for grow up, it could be, in career changers. It doesn't matter. We're all growing up. We're all, getting into new versions of ourselves every day. But I feel like for most of us, when we get into education, you have this this hopeful feel of what you're going to do. And you are excited to become a teacher because you think that you're going to change the world. And even if you don't think that you're going to change the entire world, a lot of us feel like we're going to change the world for at least our kids that we work with every day. And then we get into teaching and we find that we might have less agency than we originally thought. There's state curriculum guidelines, there's district guidelines, there's school guidelines, there's grade level guidelines, and our hopeful whole world of, I can't wait till I have a classroom and I get to work with my kids and explore and play, and I'm going to be the best teacher that, I always wanted. And then sometimes you can get mired in that. And what I think is really great is two things are happening right now. I think one, the global conversation around education is getting more towards that hopeful view. I think in the past couple decades, we got into accountability and testing and assessment to make sure our kids were truly growing. And I think we lost sight of the forest for the trees. And I think now the conversation is starting more towards not how do we get our kids to be better on the test, but how do we get our kids to be better human beings and better versions of themselves. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. And then the other thing that's happening right now that's a great crossroads with that is the advent of these globally connecting technologies that allow our kids to be instantaneously YouTube stars, bloggers, authors, creators, and also connect them to diverse opinions, ideas, and people through, like right now, you and I chatting, me sitting here by the Chicago O'Hare Airport. I don't have to get on a plane and fly to Virginia to see you, right? Definitely. So like being able to Skype and Google Hangout and FaceTime gives our kids that ability too. So now we have this seeming magical power through advanced digital technologies and a new conversation about how to change schools. And I think those things together, it's really important that we inspire our colleagues to take advantage of those two opportunities.
Absolutely. And I love your teaching innovation exploration plan, like that you provide in the book. And I love how it gives them sort of those thinking tools to consider, that there isn't one way to change their classroom, but there's multiple ways. And one thing that resonated with me as a teacher that I'd just like to hear more about is why you start like with the problem-centered approach. I actually think that's really valuable, but I'm curious at how, because sometimes people, especially folks like us that are interested in technology, you think, like, oh, here's this great tool, look what we can do with it. Rather, you're sort of turning it around and thinking about what challenges are you experiencing. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose that approach?
A lot of reasons. I can say personally, when I first got technology in my classroom, it was 2010. The iPad had just come out, was just born to the world, the iPad 1, which seems like such old school tech now. Didn't even have a camera. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I was trying really hard to find the apps and learn how to do iPads better. And I found myself really stressed, and I realized I was focusing too much on the iPad and not on trying to make my classroom better. And then when I became a digital learning coordinator and was trying to help others, I found that people were really stressed talking to me. They were like, oh God, I have to meet with Jennie, and like I have to all these other things I need to be working on right now, but I have to sit with the digital learning coordinator, and now I have to do this too. And so I looked back at my own practice, and I realized that when technology became really helpful and transformative to me, it was solving my problems. It wasn't, as teachers felt when they were meeting with me, creating new ones. So it wasn't like, now you have to learn about digital portfolios, and now you have to learn about screencasting on top of everything else you have to do. Instead, I took the approach of let's solve old problems with new tools. So what I did for myself and with my colleagues is we did the gripe jam, which was like just kind of jamming out all of our problems, saying, gosh, I have 35 fourth and fifth graders. I have only 45 minutes to teach those 35 kids math every day. Differentiation is such a beast. How do I get it done? Oh my gosh. Creating flipped classroom videos and allowing my kids to see like 6 different levels of adding and subtracting fractions and letting them choose their own adventure became really powerful. I ended up cloning myself and decreased the ratio of student to teacher from 1 to 35 to 1 to 6. And that solved a problem for me. And so the more and more I began to work with others and myself and say, give me your problems and let's come up with innovative solutions, it created more bandwidth in their minds to say, oh, like I actually have time to try something new and take risks and try something creative. But it also gave them trust in that technology isn't just a side dish, another thing that we're doing. We're teaching reading, math, social studies, science, and technology, but rather we're teaching what we've always taught, and technology is a vehicle to help us get there more effectively.
I love that idea of gripe session, but I kind of imagined myself in that scenario, and I thought, gosh, how do you keep that from spiraling, and how do you help people move from that problem identification to considering possible strategies or new opportunities?
Well, definitely. So in the book, I kind of line out, like you saw, it was like a very strict protocol, right? So you have a timed protocol, and my favorite technology actually are Post-it notes. So you take the Post-it note, you write one gripe per Post-it, and then the book you saw takes you through a whole analysis protocol to say, I'm not just complaining for the sake of complaining, right? Like as teachers, we know in staff rooms, like we complain at dinner tables, after work, having a glass of water. We're good at complaining, but what I wanted the book to do was to help people say, like, how can I take those frustrations, help me analyze them to understand, like, where's the biggest bang for my buck? I'm not going to solve all of the world's problems, but I can find the ones that if I spend time on, I'm going to get the most, it's going to free up my mind, my stress, it's going to help my kids and others. And then the way the book is written, you have a copy of my own book here? I think I do. The way the book is written, is that it's broken up into a section. At least the book is, and obviously if you don't have the book, it's not as helpful. But this section about navigating your problems, the way it's written is each of them are broken into the major areas that I, working with 32 schools when I was writing this, saw all the time. So differentiation, assessment, creating a positive classroom environment, planning for powerful learning, communicating with parents. Like, these were issues that were probably the big buckets that teachers wanted to focus on. And then each section says, here's a possible problem that you might have, and here are some innovative solutions. So you can go in and see if you can find your problem, and then it suggests some solutions. So it's about identifying the problem, but it is solution oriented. It's not like, oh, well, you have all these problems, your life sucks, sorry. It's like, no. Now how are we going to innovate around solving them?
Absolutely. And I love how it's break it down into these approachable small steps that kind of guide you through that process, because it can feel like, great, I've got this big problem. It's just hard sometimes to get your arms around it. But I also love how you embrace the idea that, look, everything you try isn't going to work. Things are going to fail. I love the idea of your Fail Fest badges. And can you talk a little bit about that and how that can be liberating for teachers as they try things?
Yeah, I think sometimes as a teacher, like, we're measured and we have all these accountability ratings, and it can get to a point where, like, it's embarrassing if you aren't successful all the time. And failure is like the opposite of what a teacher should be doing. Like, we don't want our kids to fail the test, fail the state assessment, fail the grade. Fail is bad. My friend Ken Shelton was the first one to open my eyes to the acronym. Like, FAIL could be first attempt in learning, which I loved. Teachers love acronyms. And so that, like, really shifted my mindset. And so if it's the first attempt in learning, that means you're activating a learning pathway. I took it to the next level, which is like, you can't just fail and be like, oh, I started, yay. Like, first denotes a series. So, like, once you fail, you should continue iterating so you can sail and have those subsequent attempts in learning. So because that was our new mentality, we began establishing things in some of our schools where teachers would celebrate failure, and they would come to a staff meeting and say, like, hey, so I tried flipping my classroom and creating movie screencasts for all my students, and it totally failed. Instead of syncing these fraction videos that I spent all night making, I accidentally synced Hot Tub Time Machine to all of the iPads, because that's what I rented with my husband this weekend, which is something that I actually did one time. And that was terrible, and I had to spend like half the period deleting it from all their iPads, and it was awful. And then everyone cheers for me for, like, failing. But the reason they're cheering isn't because I failed. It's because I talk about what I'm going to do next time differently. So I'm like, so what I realized is I can't use iTunes to rent personal movies and sync my instructional videos. So I created a new Apple ID with my district email address to keep everything separate, and I'm going to try it again next week. So they're celebrating not that I failed, but that I was brave enough to try, and how I'm planning on trying differently. And then I get the fail trophy for, like, having that first attempt, which denotes I'm going to have subsequent attempts. And then at the next meeting, I share how it went. Maybe I failed again, but I failed in a different way. And then someone else shares there, and I get to pass on that fail trophy. So it's celebrating taking risks and being resilient.
Absolutely. And like you said, in this current climate, that's really important, because that's just not a part of our professional culture. We have to create that culture. I love it.
Totally.
And I love too that, like, for teachers that celebrate that risk taking, even when things don't work out, it models to students that it's okay to fail too, because they're in that same culture too. And we're working really close with a high school here in Williamsburg, and they're doing design challenges where it almost never works out the right way the first time, but it's hard when they've been sort of conditioned all through school to really focus on achievement, and so I think that's a great bit of modeling as well.
Thank you.
And you sort of related to that, you talk about the importance of, like, that positive classroom culture and building a rapport with students. Can you talk a little bit about this and why, why that's sort of a necessary ingredient or a key part of your model and the way you try to encourage innovation?
Creating the rapport with kids. I mean that's not just around innovation. I mean it's just good practice in general, right? And so much about innovation and what we're talking about in the world of ed tech and digital learning has nothing to do with technology. It's just good teaching, right? And it's not so much that it's new. It's just that we're like bringing focus back to it. It's like what I said at the beginning. In the past couple decades, focus in schools has moved so much to accountability and assessment. And I think that part of the digital revolution is that it's just allowing us to rethink everything about schools. And a lot of the things that people are saying is not new. It's just like, remember when we used to do it this way? And so building those relationships with kids is so important, especially when you're going to be taking risks, because they need to feel safe to make themselves vulnerable in front of each other, in front of you as their educator, and that can be scary. So you making yourself vulnerable in front of them, it really sets a great climate and culture to say, this is a space where we all can fail and move forward, and failure isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's also really great because I think that a lot of times there's a misnomer that when you bring more technology into the classroom, you're dehumanizing that space. I think that some really unfortunate examples of technology in classrooms are what some people call blended learning, which is all of the kids are in front of adaptive learning software and we're all plugged in with our headphones staring at a screen, and we just like click, 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 and it's really brilliant software. Like if I get it wrong, I get an easier question. If I get it right, I get a more challenging. So it's self-differentiating. There's tons of data, but it's dehumanizing, and it's not really why we send kids to school. We want them to become better citizens too. So building that relationship and creating, and not just creating, but increasing the human aspect of your classroom through this process is really key, because technology used well should increase human interaction and relationships, not decrease it. Like, I've never spoken to you before, Mark, like beyond email, and technology is allowing me to see your face, your expressions, and I feel like I know you better in the past 20 minutes than I did before, thanks to technology.
Absolutely. And, thinking about the world expanding for students in the classroom, to be able to connect with authors and kids from other countries working on similar projects. I mean, those are magical experiences, but you know, as the teacher, you've really got to take that leap, because it introduces a lot of risk, I think, and a lot of new things that can go wrong. And so that, I could see how, and again, I'd love that idea of just being authentic about, things aren't always going to work and we can learn from it. And I guess one thing, I'm a big proponent of reflection, and it's really hard as a teacher to find that time and space to take a step back and think about, what have I learned from this experience? So could you talk a little bit about, you talk about that as an important part of their journey, but can you talk, like, how have you helped teachers in that crazy busy life that is school find that headspace and that time to reflect and to learn from those experiences, whether they've been positive or challenges?
Okay, so as a little girl, I always wanted to have a diary. I wanted to have a diary because I thought the lock mechanism was cool. Like, the little engineer in me really liked locks, and they're pretty, and the stationery is cool, and like on TV, like, people have diaries, and I thought that was really rad. I wanted one. And so I actually had, growing up, a closet full of empty diaries, because I didn't really know what to write in them, and I never get into the habit, but I liked the idea of having a diary. And as I began my iPad journey, one of my colleagues, her name is Carrie Cam, said, "Jennie, I think you should blog." And I was like, "Carrie, I can't blog." It's like having a diary. I have a lifetime of failed diaries, and my parents can show you my closet full of failure right there. And she was like, "Well, this is different, and here's why. When you were writing a diary, you're writing to this invisible self, right? And maybe it didn't work for you because you were talking to yourself. But what's nice about a blog is it's a diary that the world can see. And so you have an actual audience that you're writing to, and they interact with you. Like, your diary never talked back to you, and maybe that's why you didn't like it." And I was like, "Well, geez, Carrie, that's even scarier." And she goes, "Well, just pick some friends who you have comfort with, and you can have blogs that are only open to them." And I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Just try it." So I tried it and I remember my first blog post was like riddled with self-doubt. It screams lack of confidence. I think I actually put it in the book. It was like, I don't know if anyone's going to read this. I don't know if anyone's going to think I have anything to say, but here I go. And immediately that day, I remember writing it at like 5 in the morning before I went to go teach that day. And at the end of the school day, I had like 6 comments already. And they were like, we're so proud of you. And they were my friends because they were who I invited to see it at first. They were like, we're going to be on this journey with you, Jennie. We can't wait to hear how it goes. And I was so excited now to have this audience to hear my journey. And it became the way I reflected. So I would try a lesson, it would go great, I'd write about it. I'd try a lesson, it would go terribly, I'd write about it. And I'd get this really great, honest feedback. And I that grew, and that became how I found my teacher voice as a professional. And it's the most powerful reflection tool I've ever had. So I really encourage others now to try it. And I call my friend Carrie my fairy blog mother because like she inspired me to try it. And I am not like I said, like I'm not a blog type person. I could never write a diary. That's not who I was. But I can't say how powerful that is as a reflection tool.
That's great. And, and I think it just asserts the idea, too, that when we provide those experiences for our students, when they have an authentic audience like that, when they get that feedback on their writing and the encouragement or the suggestions or advice or whatever, it's another great, connection with how we can take what we're learning and bring it back to our students as well. So it's great.
Totally.
Just want to make sure I hit one last thing. I was so intrigued by the play date concept and about how you sustain this enthusiasm, because sometimes trying new things and that learning process can be daunting. So could you talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Playdate was not just my idea. It was a group of friends that were coming back from a conference. Autumn Laidler, Anita Orozco-Huffman, Sue Gorman. We were all flying back from Boston, I believe. And we were just like, gosh, we learned so much, but we're exhausted. And now we have to go back to work tomorrow and clean up the mess the sub left. Because, when teachers take a day off work, it takes like a week to like reset your classroom. And we have this like laundry list of tools we want to try, but no time to actually try them because we took 2 vacation days to go do this and we don't have any time now to explore. And we realized like when it comes to this kind of professional learning, we didn't want to sit and listen about tools. We wanted to play with them. And we just wanted a day where we didn't have to do laundry or drop kids off to soccer practice or worry about what's for dinner. And we could just like try green screen and try, class craft for gamification. So we came up with the idea for Playdate. It is a really long acronym because, again, teachers love acronyms. We're teachers. So it's people learning and asking why, digital age teacher exploration. You don't need to know the acronym, but just the concept of having a Playdate is what it sounds like. And teachers come, there's different rooms with different ideas. So like one room might be like digital book creation. Another room might be blogging. Another room might be Breakout EDU or Makerspace, whatever, and you just go in the room and there's no presenters, there's usually no projectors even, and it's just a bunch of people with like the stuff. Like you walk into a room full of makeys or with just a bunch of laptops and you're like, hey guys, let's try green screen. Let's turn it on. No one knows how to do it in this room. There is no expert in the room. We're all going to fail together. We're all going to be vulnerable together. But at the end of this 60, 90-minute period, we're going to have played our way to understanding. And so we had a couple here in Chicago. We blogged about it. We created a website, bit.ly/Playdate conference. And now that it's all over the world, it's self-sustaining. I'm sorry to say, we haven't had one in Chicago recently, and I feel really bad about that. But, they're happening all over the place, and that's really great to see. And we're sort of like an ed camp. We're happy to share the materials for how to do it as long as it's free and open source, because we feel like, people shouldn't have to pay to play.
Love it. Jennie, I got to tell you, I just love your enthusiasm and your energy and just your excitement about this, because that goes a long way, towards imagining kind of what a different experience could be like in your classroom or for your students. So I just love that. I guess I just want to finish off with just one last question, and then if you've got anything else you'd like to share. But if you could just offer just a few words of advice to teachers that are ready but kind of inexperienced with sort of shifting that mindset towards encouraging more creativity, more play, more exploration in their classroom, what words of advice would you offer, other than to buy your book? Because that's a good place to start.
Start with kids' curiosity. So I think I'd have two pieces of advice. Start with kids' curiosity and don't try and dictate it too much. Sometimes people get lost in the mire of like, this is what school should be. So if I'm going to have an activity, I need to have a rubric and I need to give kids like 3 options for what to do. And there has to be a set timeline. Like, try and suspend all of that for a hot second and just be like, hey, what do you wonder about, kids? Like, what questions do you have? And I do have actually a chapter or a section in the book about like cultivating kids' curiosity, because I believe that we've like slowly killed curiosity in the schema of school. And so whereas a kid after school might know how to ask questions for whatever reason in school, kids sometimes think this is like a free will free zone. And when you ask them to ask a question, they're like, well, what time's lunch? Or what's, how many points is this worth? They like can't even think that deep into the curiosities. You might have to retrain them on how to ask wild and crazy questions. But then let them explore that and let them follow their passion. And that's kind of the basis for ideas like 20% time, genius hour, passion projects. And then, yeah, you do need to have a focus. You do need to help kids benchmark their progress and set goals, and so that it is structured play. And then there is what's the word? There is an outcome, but don't begin with like, I hope they get Common Core Standard X and National Next Generation Science Standard Y, and this is going to be the rubric, because you're just going to like kill the creativity from the beginning.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Sometimes it goes back to the idea of taking risks, putting yourself out there, and just going with it and see what happens. It's great. Yeah. Very inspiring. So, Jennie, thank you so much for joining us. You got to follow her at Miss Magiera on Twitter, and you can Google the book, or bit.ly/adventuresbook. Got to check it out. And we'll put that along with some notes here with this video. But Jennie, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to talk with you.
Thank you.